Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, Matthew, Watty's channel. Today we are continuing on with the My Favorite WWF LJN tournament as we move into round 2. So, the last tournament video we made, the very last match was a one-on-one-on-one, but we did push 2 of those figures forward. So we do have an even 20 winners going into round 2. So we're only looking at 10 matchups. So the way that I'm going to break it down, I'm going to have 4 matches here in the first video, 3 matches in the second, 3 matches in the third video. So round 2 will go by pretty smoothly. That'll leave us 10 winners. And man, we could probably get everything else done in one video. Round 3, round 4, round 5 in one video. I don't know if I want to put the semifinals and finals together. I'll probably split it up depending on how long the video runs. But without further ado, let's kick into this video and select our first competitors for the second round. So, first matchup is going to feature Vince McMahon as he does battle with Yellow Elizabeth. Next matchup is going to feature Black Skirt Elizabeth, and she is going to do battle against Vince. That's awesome. Vince McMahon in blue. So we've had one video where I had like 3 or 4 different Mean Gene Okerlunds in one video, and now I've got a video here where Vince McMahon takes on Elizabeth in back-to-back matches. Alright, this one is going to be White Jacket, Mean Gene Okerlund, as he squares off against Bobby Heenan. Last matchup is going to feature White Shirt Referee, and he is going to square off against Mr. Fuji. Alright. Simple enough. I'm going to pause the video, guys. Go ahead and pull those figures, and I will be back in a split second. Alright, guys. Figures have been pulled. Now, there was one Mean Gene Okerlund figure. I'm not sure which one actually won. I don't remember. I have it written down somewhere, but I don't have my list with me. So, one was a red bow tie, one was a black bow tie. I just grabbed the one with black, so I don't think it really matters. I mean, like I said, they're basically the same figure. Alright, so, first matchup was going to feature original Vince McMahon as he squares off against custom Mega Powers Elizabeth. You know, first glance, because with the male wrestlers / commentators / referees, managers, what have you, they're always going to be bigger, bulkier figures than the female wrestlers. So we know how much I like the bulkiness of the figures, especially the really heavy set guys like Bundy and Andre the Giant, etc. So you would think that would, right off the bat, give Vince McMahon a leg up. And you would be right. That does give him a huge percentage over the Elizabeth figure. I always spend so much time complaining about Ron Simmons' Galoob because of the fused hand to the chest, but I never really knock it with the LJN. Maybe because I really don't pay attention to it that much. You know, I kind of look at it more as a stationary figure for display purposes and nothing else. Whereas as a kid, I actually had Ron Simmons' Galoob, and I actually had to use him as a playable figure because we simply didn't have enough figures to complete matchups. Like I always said, we only had like 6 or 7, I want to say 7 Galoobs, maybe another 15, 16, 17 Hasbro figures. So, you know, I was always Royal Rumble obsessed, even as a kid, and that's what I really enjoy. I enjoyed making Royal Rumbles, so I always had to grab other figures to kind of make up my Royal Rumble. And there goes your He-Man Panthro character, and your Harry and the Big Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot character, rubber figure, etc. So a lot of He-Man figures were like monsters in my childhood federation, what have you. So, and as an adult, seeing this for the first time, I mean, to me, it's a display piece and nothing more. Elizabeth, because of what's going on in the life of Vince McMahon right now, you really don't want to see guys like that, you know, push forward, because you don't want to keep talking about them. You don't want to keep giving them all these accolades when it turns out that, you know, they might be scumbags in real life. I kind of did that, the same thing with Chris Benoit in the My Favorite Remco tournament. His figure was the best of the matchup, so I had to push him forward in the second round. But guys like that, you really don't want to give them credit for anything. Elizabeth, we all loved Elizabeth as kids. The way that her life ended was so disappointing. You wanted to think that someone like Elizabeth would have been above all of that. It's just a sad story. And, you know, she was like, what, 40 years old, 42? She was still an extremely young woman. So that was highly disappointing. I actually really like this custom. I got this one, I think, from Stangergq, if I'm not mistaken. And winning this on auction was amazing. To be honest, for the love of me, I couldn't even remember this outfit. Like, I knew it was Mega Powers, but I couldn't remember the whole flower and all that. And nowadays, I see this design everywhere. And in my favorite LJN tournament, she was a third rounder. And I think she only lost that third round because she went up against Kamala. And come on, there's like 5 wrestlers, 5 figures of all my LJNs, original or custom, that could have beat Kamala. So, I think she could have had a chance to go a lot further had she squared off against, you know, someone less domineering than that awesome figure. Neither one of these are playable figures. They're both design figures. Vince McMahon, he's a bulkier figure. That gives him a leg up. He is an original figure. And I do, even though I've got a million customs, I still prefer originality over customization. So that gives him an even further leg up. Design-wise, I actually like the Elizabeth figure a little bit more, color scheme-wise, because of the whole reminiscent to Hulk Hogan and Macho Man's Mega Powers tag team. I am going to go with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon, after all, I think a lot of people would agree that he is or was childhood for a lot of folks. You know, Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon, Mean Gene Oakland, Howard Finkel, you know. Those are the type of voices that you remember fondly. Gorilla Monsoon, I don't know. Like Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, they obviously would probably be on my list of favorite commentators. I always said Jerry Lawler, Vince McMahon. Yeah, Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan would probably be my top 4. So here is the tough part. There's not really a whole lot more I can say about the next matchup that wasn't already said with the first matchup. In fact, I actually really liked the yellow Mega Powers Elizabeth more. Yeah, let me get her out of this stand. So if I think that I would have chosen the yellow Elizabeth over the black Elizabeth, then if one Vince McMahon would have beaten one Elizabeth, it only makes sense that the other one defeats the other one, correct? I have to say yes. So this right here is going to be actually a very quick matchup because, again, there's not really a whole lot to add on to it. This one was actually done by Rob, and, you know, he added some amazing graphics to go along with, you know, the implementation of a new skirt and everything. And when you look at the original Elizabeth, she's got like a very light purple on her shirt. Where here it's a dark purple, maybe even a dark blue, like a navy blue. But I'm gonna say dark purple on here. 2 great Elizabeth customs, no doubt, but kind of odd that you would see both Vince McMahon square off against both Elizabeth figures back to back. But The two Vinces are pushing forward to round 3. Another interesting matchup because, again, when I talked about voices of childhood, you know what? Friggin', here's the thing about Mean Gene Oakland. He was what was he? I know he worked in the newsroom. I don't remember if he was like a weatherman or what he did in the newsroom, but he used to work for like a news channel prior to joining WWF, and I'm wondering if he worked for AWA. If I can recollect correctly, I think he was an AWA spokesman as well, interviewer, what have you, prior to WWF. I mean, it would make sense because it seems like everybody has come through the AWA at some point prior to WWF. So, I really like this figure. You guys know I really enjoyed the Mean Gene original figure as well, with his black suit. Man was always well dressed, well groomed. You know, nice, beautiful, thick mustache and everything. I always really enjoyed him and his commercials, especially when he was like doing commercials for like Toys R Us and whatnot. That was always a lot of fun. And his bond with Hulk Hogan, just whenever the two got together and they were doing interviews and whatnot, I just loved the way that two men meshed well together. You know, it wasn't just, you know, hey, I work with you. I think they actually had a great personal bond with one another as well, which really helped them work well. And so the one downside I don't like about the original Mean Gene figure, and they obviously keep it, all they do change is the color scheme. They really don't do anything with the arms usually, is with the microphone being way up there. You know, that right there kind of doesn't make sense. If he actually had it, like, you know, right in front of him so he could talk into it when that would have been a lot better. Solid, good-looking figure. Bobby Heenan. I've talked about Bobby Heenan and guys like Ric Flair, who I despise from childhood. But as an adult, I completely respect, you know, their history. You know, Ric Flair's longevity in wrestling. I think he's still wrestling. At least he had a wrestling match in his 70s. You know, probably the most crowned champion of all time. I think he and John Cena, if I'm not mistaken, have like 16 champions in the WWF or something. Some crazy number. Now, I think that has to include WCW as well, because there's no way he was in WWF long enough, you know, prior to the merge, for him to garner that type of accolades to get that many championships. But Bobby Heenan, as an adult, I haven't been able to go back and respect Ric Flair or be a fan of Ric Flair, I should say. But Bobby Heenan is a completely different story. I despised him as a kid. You know, the Weasel after all. But as an adult, I freaking love Bobby Heenan. And just kind of hearing his shoot interviews, and it's like, man, it's just a complete 180 from the guy we grew up watching. And that just shows you how much of a talent he was. The man played his role to perfection. I mean, he was a comedian. His banter with Gorilla Monsoon is legendary. Creating one of the most popular stables ever. Brilliant on commentary. Brilliant talker and interviewer. Just a lot of fun. And he does the right thing to get the right people in the right situation to help them to win the match. So, Bobby Heenan was awesome. In real life, Bobby Heenan is an amazing person, or was an amazing person. One of my favorite LJN figures, but because obviously I'm going to covet the wrestlers more than the managers, even with the great play pose, it pushes him a lot further down the list than it should be. If he was a little bit taller, maybe a little bit wider or so, yeah, about this figure with this pose, this is an exceptional figure. So, I think Bobby Heenan, to me, is a definite go-to figure and has to be a legitimate choice to defeat Mean Gene Oakland. I don't remember if I have any other Mean Genes in this tournament left over. Maybe just one. Possibly the original, if I'm not mistaken. But Bobby Heenan is just a no-brainer. Last matchup is kind of interesting. Mr. Fuji, like Heenan, like a lot of managers, you know, previous wrestling experience prior to the managing. And yeah, this is vintage 1980s. This is what I can recollect to some extent. Obviously, I had more memories, you know, being older in the 90s. So when I think Mr. Fuji, it was always Mr. Fuji with Yokozuna as an example. But you see, go back and watch some old clips. It's like, yeah. Sometimes you watch some clips and it's like, you know, like a light bulb just lights up in your head. It's like, man, I absolutely 100% remember that, but I wouldn't have remembered it if I hadn't just seen it. And other times it's like, well, I may remember that, but do I remember it really, or do I just think I remembered it because I just watched it right now? Sometimes it's the former, sometimes it's the latter, but Mr. Fuji in this outfit looks pretty solid. You know, obviously getting a little bit bulkier, a little thicker around the waistband in later half of the 80s. And you look at him in the 90s when he was starting managing Yokozuna, he looked a lot slimmed down. Maybe it was just the robes or whatnot, but not quite as thick in my opinion. I like the figure a lot. Pose is adequate for playability. You can still very much use this as a playable wrestling action figure if you choose. I don't care about the clothing, accessories. Like I said, King Harley Race is a terrible figure, but because of the accessory, because of his jacket that he's got on, that takes him from being like a top 5 worst LJN and probably putting him somewhere in like the top 40, top 50 range. So outfits do make all the difference in the world. Mr. Fuji is a fantastic one. Because LJN created so many incredible pieces, I don't even know if I could even put him in like the top 30, top 40, but I think he strongly deserves it. And we've got our generic referees. I forget which video it was, but at one point I was making a video during this tournament, and I talked about how even though the referees are supposed to be generic characters, cartoonish looks, not really modeled after anybody particular, but I kind of like to look at them now as like the Hebner twins, simply because with Zombie Sailor's blue shirt, Earl Hebner, LJN, you got a blue shirt referee. So why not make the white shirt Dave Hebner? It would be a lot more fun to think of it that way. So those fans out there, I'm not like the craziest fan of Terry Funk. The figure itself, to me, doesn't really do anything. It's an average figure, but I understand that there are a lot of people out there that are absolutely obsessed with that wrestling figure. That's fine. Everybody has, their preference is what they like to go with. If you love Terry Funk, you're gonna love the referee. It's the exact same figure, essentially same pose for the most part. Obviously, slight differences. It's not like 100% identical. I think Terry Funk is a little bit bigger as well. So, but overall, quality figure. And I always said, if I'm using this, if I'm a kid, or if I ever decide to start making some like Playtime Wrestling type videos, referee isn't going to be refereeing my matches, at least not always. This guy is going to be a legitimate wrestler, and the referee would be his gimmick. So you can always create your own characters. So good. Both of these figures, so amazing. I like Mr. Fuji a lot, but I said it from the get-go that I always felt like the referees, if you were going to put them in a manager tournament with commentary analysts, with legitimate managers, with interviewers, with the different celebrity custom figures I get in, they should be, front of the line type figures. It doesn't mean that they're going to win the tournament, but in my opinion, I do feel like they should be somewhere at the very top when this tournament is over. So I think white shirt referee moving forward, for me, only makes the most sense. Alright, so both Vince McMahons defeated both remaining Elizabeth Customs. Bobby Heenan defeated Mean Gene Okerlund. And of course, white shirt referee defeats Mr. Fuji. In round 2, part 2, we're going to see 3 matches, and in part 2-3, we're going to see the last 3 matches, and that'll give us 10 matchups, 10 winners, and as we move on into round 3. Now, if I make both those videos today, which I most likely will, do I start working on part 3 or round 3? Probably not. I'll probably hold off for a while. Currently I still have one more video left in queue for 1-5, and if I finish off all 3 videos from round 2, we're already a month ahead then. So, alright, so I will end the video here, guys. Let's get started on the next set of matches. Until next time, thanks for watching. Goodbye, everybody.